Welcome to the Personality Couch podcast, where we discuss all things personality and clinical practice. I'm your host, Doc Bach, and I'm here with my co-host, Doc Fish. We are both licensed clinical psychologists in private practice, and today I'm going to be unpacking what the research says about malignant narcissists in politics. We'll examine the psychological and geopolitical reasons why they rise to power, how they bamboozle followers, unique ways their grandiosity, need for enemies, and unstable thought processes show up in the political arena, and what happens when their tyrannical reign ends. Wowza! This research is both timely and relevant. Time is of the essence. Let's get to it. Okay, so let's be real. If we took all the narcissistic public figures out of government and leadership, there'd be so few left, right? Mm-hmm. But let me just say, there's nothing new under the sun. Political leaders have been stinking it up to high heaven for generations, some much worse and sinister than others.
Truth.
It makes sense that we'd find lots of narcissists in politics, right?
Yes, because at healthy levels, it's confidence and assuredness that you're the best person for the task. You have to have a lot of confidence to run a country or region.
Exactly. And that's not really my idea of a life goal.
Mine either.
So in 1993, Post noted that narcissism itself is inconsistent with the ability to sustain effective leadership. Is there any wonder?
Even more so with malignant narcissism, which is the most disintegrated, unhealthy form of narcissism and is essentially a third of the way to evil, per Eric Fromm. These types are paranoid, aggressive and sadistic, law-breaking, and on the verge of a psychotic break.
Oof, yes. And then we put that malignant narcissist at the helm of a people group or country, and we're going to have major problems. They are absolutely going to abuse that power to meet their ego needs. Vaknin, in his book Malignant Narcissism, quotes, "Narcissistic leadership poses a rebellion against the old ways. Narcissistic movements are juvenile, a reaction to narcissistic injuries inflicted upon a narcissistic and rather psychopathic toddler nation state."
Okay, so it starts with a reaction to a narcissistic injury, to the leader or to the narcissistic nation itself. But how do we even end up voting for and following these unsafe, risky types of people? Like, surely we know better?
Well, you would think, but this isn't something that just happens overnight. So let's start by looking at the factors that clear the way for the malignant narcissist to rise to power. So it often starts with a narcissistic nation to begin with, and there are often systemic and geopolitical reinforcers setting the stage. So for example, Sam Vaknin, researcher of malignant narcissism, quotes, "Given a high enough level of frustration triggered by recurrent failures in all spheres of policy, even the most resilient democracy begins to favor strongmen leaders whose self-confidence and apparent omniscience, all-knowingness, all but guarantee a change of course for the better."
Okay, so this reminds me of our 2024 Trends in Review episode about how every single major developed country with an election in 2024 lost. Yeah. Like every single one. Mm-hmm. No matter what they stood for. There was so much frustration that there was a need for like any change.
Absolutely. Yeah. So translated, all of this means a nation is especially vulnerable in the throes of and immediately following traumatic events like a war, international crises, economic issues, a pandemic. Even more so, a people group becomes hungry for something new, something different from previous leaders. Enter the authoritarian leader who speaks in absolutes with no room for gray. With a clear enemy, there's a clear solution, and he is your person to follow.
Perhaps to combat the helplessness that comes with the traumatic event. Like after chaos, people search for a solid structure.
Yeah, that's part of it for sure. And with Hitler, his reign came on the heels of World War I and the Great Depression. In Germany, inflation was soaring, unemployment skyrocketed, and as a great speaker with big promises, the people thought Hitler would rescue them from their economic issues. Plain and simple. That's how Nazi Germany started.
Obviously, people didn't start out thinking and condoning harshness. There's a slippery slope there. The people are beat down, feeling like victims and searching for a rescuer.
So these malignant narcissistic types often don't have a strong political resume. They don't have to, but they rise to power claiming to be the Messiah for the nation. And regardless of their past, the malignant narcissist's duty is for the future.
Okay, we could get deep into the Freudian analysis of like daddy issues played out on the political stage.
Yeah.
But essentially what you're saying is that a people group or country is looking for a father figure to guide them when everything else has failed.
Yes.
Like then a political figure who positions himself as the Messiah promises to change, rescue a society not only from crisis, war, or trauma that they endured or still are in, but also from other bad political father figures from previous years. Like, I'm the safest, strongest, most powerful father. So come be protected under my arms or reign.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And comparing themselves to previous ones, that's a big part of it too. But anyone here can be susceptible to the charm of a malignant narcissist, especially during or after trauma. So Vaknin again quotes, but at times of historical crisis, usually psychologically healthy individuals may temporarily become overwhelmed by external circumstances and will also find the malignant narcissist's posture of strength and extreme confidence attractive, temporarily regressing and delegating omnipotence to him.
We regress, meaning backslide, like we surrender our control, we defer responsibility and power to the all-powerful Father who is going to rescue me, us, the nation.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, authoritarianism is drawn to authoritarianism. So certain types of people naturally will be drawn to these types of leaders, regardless of what's going on geopolitically.
Okay, for example, those who were raised in strict, rule-bound environments that impose like polarized right-wrong practices, they'll find the black and white thinking calming because it's clear. It's the childhood default. We follow the strong leader who draws thick lines in the sand for right and wrong, and he leads the way, we follow.
Yeah.
It's like the same process of why we give toddlers two choices anymore. And they can't handle it.
Yeah, good point. So you can also see here the overlap between cult leadership and political leadership. It's the same script, it's just different settings. All right, here we are. The malignant narcissist is now in leadership. Followers are in awe. I like to call this next phase the narcoticizing phase. So narcotics numb out. We've just signed over our issues to our elected father figure. Now it's go to sleep. Daddy will fix it. Essentially, we can tune out the problems as our leader will take care of it. The pain and sting of the trauma is numbed, and so are we.
According to Vaknin, the followers feel calm and assured of the master's unconditional love and acceptance. It's a reenactment of the followers' early childhood, only this time with an ideal, benevolent parent. I mean, think about it through a child's eyes, like a kiddo who just navigated an extremely difficult, scary trauma, just wants their strong, protective dad. What will they do when they see dad? Run to him? and find relief in his arms. And that relief is the recovery from all the trauma.
Yeah, good point. So it's interesting that these early attachment dynamics play out on the national level. Yikes. In this numbed out, womb-like place, we can easily delegate our thinking to another person. So this person is all good. I trust them completely. And here, there's a loss of individuality. So essentially, whatever he believes, I believe. Whatever he loves, I love.
In doing that, we don't have to deal with the cognitive dissonance, the discomfort, or the gray.
Yeah. And so we've adopted a primitive, childlike mentality. There's comfort in that regression. Like, let the authority figure do the heavy lifting.
It's avoiding that feeling of helplessness that the world isn't great.
Yeah.
So we return to our early childhood defenses and comforts.
That's exactly it. So collectively, it can feel like you're part of a family of followers, all on the same page, maybe receiving special treatment or a special knowledge. And really, this comes into play if there's conspiracy theories involved. With that, there's a feeling of power by proxy, or I'm powerful by supporting him.
I'm special. Daddy's favorite. Like, look how loyal I am. And I'm great in my specialness too. We're seeing some of our own narcissistic tendencies come out here in the desire to have protection.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so after the narcoticizing phase, we have what I call the honeymoon phase. So in terms of wooing an audience, researcher Post quotes, the narcissist is often extremely charming and delightful to be with, contributing to the false spell cast over his intimates. So it's in this phase that the leader has followers, and then the followers adore him, which creates a constant feedback loop of what is called psychopathological resonance.
In other words, you have little narcissists propping up a really big narcissistic leader.
So this creates a hall of mirrors, leader and follower, each reflecting back adoration and self-love. So it's a narcissistic echo chamber. I love you.
I love you.
So idealization is key here. We see in the narcissistic leader a reflection of ourselves, and even better yet, an idealized version of ourselves, like a lion cub looking in the mirror and seeing a lion.
In other words, the leader is a narcissistic extension of ourselves.
Yeah.
We are one. And this is literally what kids do. The 4-year-old looks to dad and copies him. You do a push-up, I'll do a push-up. You say you're strong, look at my muscles. I'm strong just like you. I don't want milk, mama. And then daddy goes and pours himself a cup of milk. And then it's all of a sudden, I'm going to go get some milk.
Exactly it.
Okay, but what happens when your idealized parent fails? Surely then it's a wake-up call, right?
Wrong, actually. So Vaknin again says, the more these leaders deviate from their initial promises and the more they fail, the dearer they are to the hearts of their constituents. Like them, their new chosen leader is struggling, coping, trying, and failing, and like them, he has shortcomings and vices. This affinity is endearing and captivating, and it helps to form a shared psychosis between ruler and people.
So it turns into, oh, dad's a human too, just like me. Like, let's have empathy. He'll help us maybe when he's feeling better.
Yeah, and the gaslighting of ourselves begins.
Oh boy. So we have the framework. National and global crises pave the way for us to act out dysfunctional family dynamics on a super large scale. We have the idealization of daddy, the numbing relief of his rescue, but what are the actual characteristics behind a malignant narcissist leader? Like, behind the veneer, what is actually there?
So the narcissistic leader prefers the sparkle and glamour of well-orchestrated illusions to the tedium and method of real accomplishments. His reign is all smoke and mirrors, devoid of substance, consisting of mere appearances and mass delusions.
Ooh, that makes me think of the opening quote in American Psycho, where the main character implies that there's no real him, just an abstraction of him.
Yeah. Or like the Wizard of Oz. Like, who's the man behind the curtain? So like any classic narcissist, the first thing behind that curtain of smoke and mirrors is the grandiosity. But grandiosity is going to have a unique look on the global stage.
Okay, I imagine this could mean maybe underestimating what enemies can do, because surely they're less powerful than I.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, there's a term called over-optimism, which is I can do no wrong. Like, of course I can end this war in 24 hours. I'm all powerful. Or, of course I'll negotiate with that leader over there and persuade them to come my direction. It's not that hard.
Because their greatness literally depends on it. And it amps up the followers.
Yes, it amps up the followers' praise. There's a constant preoccupation with image. Like, how well am I performing? How are my approval ratings? How are the crowds and the turnout? So this puffed up appraisal is even more problematic if the advisory group around him is also stimulated by high adrenaline situations.
Then you have narcissists strengthening narcissists.
Yes, more on that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But then we also have to look at things like language, beliefs, and decision-making with these types of leaders.
Okay, so language is autocentric per Bach 1985, meaning what they say exists only to sustain the self and the ego.
Yeah. So words do not really tell us about beliefs. Words are for ego cookies. Beliefs are seemingly cards he holds to play or discard depending on what feeds the ego. So Post stated, the only central and stable belief of the narcissist is the centrality of the self. What's good for him is good for his country.
Which maybe could change depending on what group he's talking to.
Exactly. Yeah, his mind changes frequently. And in extreme situations, his identity actually gets absorbed into the country's identity. So Saddam Hussein is a great example of this. His followers would actually state, Saddam is Iraq and Iraq is Saddam. So essentially, there is no Iraq without me.
Gosh, we're again highlighting that narcissistic extension and enmeshment.
Right. Lack of boundaries. Yeah. So while a malignant narcissist as a leader might speak with certainty and conviction, there's nothing there. It's just fluff.
Again, like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so then we look at decision-making, which we've already hinted at this, but Post again says, the decision-making of the narcissistic leader, especially crisis decision-making, is often impaired. The narcissistic leader has difficulty accepting criticism or new information, contributing to sycophantic advisory circles. So essentially, there's deficient problem solving because they can't admit their own incompetence.
Okay, and they typically won't seek out someone knowledgeable about the subject. Yeah. Only people who give them ego cookies.
Yeah, exactly. So though malignant narcissist leaders are technically based in reality and not fully psychotic, their political reality is skewed because they only receive the news and the information in ego-approved packages from ego-approved delivery people.
It has to suit the ego. This leads to only hearing about things that reflect them favorably, but not the whole truth. So how can they make important decisions for the country and the world?
Exactly. And of course, if you can't handle the day-to-day reality, how in the world are you going to handle a crisis?
Poorly. You're not going to be objective or see the big picture or consequences. It's going to be a skewed response focused on self-enhancement.
You're right on. So essentially, political crises become ego crises. So the malignant narcissistic leader is going to operate in ways that help the ego and are not necessarily in the best interest of other people or the country. Said a different way, crises are a photo op.
Ooh.
Yeah. And what's worse, deficits in empathy and perspective taking mean problems with putting themselves in real enemy shoes and then strategizing appropriately to keep the nation safe. And even scarier yet, the malignant narcissist leader may actually create conflict.
Okay, conflict and stress produces an adrenaline high. And we know what we learned about adrenaline highs and narcissists, right? They're addicted. That's why narcissists like Coke.
Well, yes, they do. Oh, so in his book, Malignant Self-Love, the author quotes, "Trapped in his pathology, the narcissist resembles an alien on drugs, a junkie of narcissistic supply." In other words, like someone with an addiction to drugs, they will do anything for that ego high, including breaking the law and abuse of power, especially as it gets harder and harder to get high when you're sitting at the top, to the point that he loses his moral compass.
Again, that's self-focused. The high is more important than morality.
Which is scary. Scary stuff. And that brings me to the next point, that the conscience of the malignant narcissist leader is corruptible. So while your average narcissist has a conscience, believe it or not,
they do.
Yeah, psychopaths do not. So a narcissist's conscience is based on the self. Mm-hmm. Thus, it's easily influenced and prone to corruption.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about the antisocial behaviors of the malignant narcissist. Things like breaking the law and lying if it means the ego is spared.
Yes, yes. Which then leads us to the next thing, and that's thought processes, paranoia, and verging on psychosis.
Oh boy.
So part of what makes a malignant narcissist in power so dangerous is that he has the power to basically restructure his reality by devaluing or even eliminating those who threaten his fragile self-esteem. So essentially, they can transform their delusions of grandeur into reality in this power vacuum that they're in.
So like, I'm the best at all times and no one can defect.
Right. Like, yeah, that guy over there doesn't think so. We'll fire him. That agency doesn't approve of me. We'll defund them. That person spoke up against me. We'll deport him.
Goodness. I could see how this applied to Hitler.
Yeah, and then when advisors don't stand up to him, this only reinforces that his fantasies of absolute power and greatness are real. And this is where it's a huge advantage versus your everyday street narcissist. This powerful position creates that power vacuum.
Exactly. The power that comes with political leadership means that the likelihood of being challenged by an individual is significantly lower.
And this is why when they are in power, they are so dangerous. I cannot emphasize that enough. So with that, malignant narcissists as leaders then become arbiters of truth, the person who tells you what is real and what isn't. It's not uncommon for malignant narcissists to villainize or even control the media and further suppress the truth.
That is so scary. Because if you can't have access to true reporting and a free press, how will you know what's happening?
Exactly. And unsurprisingly, malignant narcissists in leadership can actually spiral into thought disorder territory.
As we talked about in our episode of Malignant Narcissism, they can have like mini psychotic episodes. They are a personality structure that is on the verge of falling apart.
Interestingly, Richard Nixon reportedly was becoming more paranoid in the aftermath of Watergate. He was talking to portraits in the White House, possibly even holding court with them, and he knew his impeachment fate was closing in, and he was devolving.
Oh, wow. That is fascinating.
Yeah. So like we can all crumble under stress, but malignant narcissist types are already on the cusp of a psychotic break. And we know that with political power comes immense stress.
Right. Just look at those before and after pictures of leaders.
Oh, so true. Yeah. So basically, the psyche is going to devolve under the load. And with that, a malignant narcissist can have actual breaks with reality.
Okay. I imagine this coincides with paranoia as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So another hallmark feature of malignant narcissists in leadership is their need for enemies to succeed. The target of aggression is typically a person or people group associated with a flaw in their delusional narcissistic reality. So researcher Post in 1993 noted, minorities or others, often arbitrarily selected, constitute a perfect, easily identifiable object of all that is wrong. They are hated on religious and socioeconomic grounds or because of their race, sexual orientation, or origin. They are different. In a classic act of projection, they are accused of being narcissistic.
There has to be a scapegoat on which they put their badness or failures. It's the paranoid piece of malignant narcissism.
And in this way, malignant narcissists overlap with terrorist groups, with the in-group, out-group dynamics.
Even with people groups or nations that actually have more in common with the leader, he cannot psychologically accept that because to split off his own badness is useful.
And the thought is, like, there has to be an enemy, and I'm the hero. It screws up the narrative if I don't have a villain.
Drama triangle. To be a hero or rescuer, there has to be a victim and a persecutor. Plus, we also have that polarization.
Yeah, and you can see how this would go hand in hand with many psychotic episodes. So Vaknin notes, the narcissist sees enemies and conspiracies everywhere. He often casts himself as the heroic victim, martyr, of dark and stupendous forces. In every deviation from his tenets, he spies malevolent and ominous subversion.
It means there's a paranoid orientation. Like everyone is out to get me and thwart my plans, and I am the victim. But don't worry, I'm also the hero. It's paranoia.
Yeah, but the paranoia is also part of the grandiosity. The thought is, what would my power be without enemies who are envious or out to get me? Because important men deserve important enemies.
He is important enough of a threat to be threatened. Masses of people are watching and conspiring because he's so important, and it feeds the need for constant attention.
Yes, and if one enemy fades, make up new enemies.
So war might be sought even when it's unnecessary?
Definitely. I need an enemy to be the hero. I need stimulation and a dopamine hit.
Goodness. Okay. Well, let's get to the life cycle of a narcissistic leaders.
So Post says high ambition fused with ability can indeed lead to great achievements, but frustrated dreams of glory in the political arena have been associated with acts of extreme assertion and major changes of political direction. Yikes. Okay. And there are two age ranges most at risk. What are your guesses, Doc Fish?
I'm not sure about the second, but I imagine older age is one.
Yes. Old age, as we know, we've talked about it before.
Narcissists do not age well.
No, they don't. Old age can spur them to exaggerated action before death, especially if battling illness or really anything else that comes along with aging.
Yeah, because facing aging and death highlights that they're not invincible and cannot forever be superior.
Yeah, and then interestingly, the other one is midlife. So between ages like 38 to 43, researchers found that military coups actually often occur around this age. Stalin himself was 40 when he had his first major conflict with Lenin about Stalin's own greatness.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, midlife crisis gone way bad.
Oh, boy. Okay, what about after the narcissistic leader dies or when their reign of power or terror ends?
Yeah. So, I mean, in the end, the only person a governing narcissist is loyal to is to himself. We know that. And with that, relationships are going to fall apart over time. Like, if you exist only for their ego, that can only last so long. So out of this, exploitation is very, very common.
Loyalty fails because other people have needs.
Right, exactly. Interestingly, the malignant narcissist as a leader can come to resent his followers because he sees their reflection in himself, which reminds him of his own humanity, ordinariness, and personal failings to live up to his own grandiose fantasies.
This makes so much sense. So malignant narcissists want to be more than human because they dehumanize others. So then if they see the humanness in their followers, they'll resent that. It goes against their grandiosity.
Yeah, and this is just one of the downfalls, one of the many downfalls of the Hall of Mirrors, right? Echo back, I love you. Oh, I see myself. I see myself. That doesn't end well. And with that, malignant narcissists will turn on their followers. So in their paranoia, they often think their followers are conspiring against them. So Vaknin here notes, a narcissistic leader is likely to justify the indiscriminate butchering of his own people by claiming that they had intended to assassinate him, undo the revolution, devastate the economy, harm the nation or the country, etc.
Let's destroy so I'm not destroyed.
Yeah, how paranoid is that? Right. Yeah. So this can feel really surprising to his loyal followers who've been dropped from grace, as they often really believed they were quite valuable to their hero.
Well, what about the followers that were just looking for comfort during or post-crisis?
That's a really great question. Actually, a lot of times these followers don't stick. Like they're less needy now and don't need a rescuer. So Winston Churchill in England is actually a great example of this following World War II, because his strength and confidence-inspiring rhetoric were no longer needed after the war.
Oh, that's the little narcissism part too. Like if the leader doesn't meet the needs, the leader is discarded.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And then in the aftermath of his regime, the narcissistic leader having died, been deposed, or voted out of office, it all unravels. The tireless and constant magic tricks cease, and the entire edifice crumbles. Economic miracles turn out to have been fraud-laced bubbles. Loosely held empires disintegrate. Laboriously assembled business conglomerates go to pieces. Earth-shattering and revolutionary scientific discoveries and theories are discredited. Social experiments expire in mayhem. Thank you, Vaknin. Wow.
The bubble has popped. The illusion cannot be maintained and it falls apart.
Indeed. Yeah, the whole thing has been pure theater and tricks, often with illegal underpinnings and insider trading, but at the expense of the scapegoated, the marginalized, and yes, even the loyal followers.
So initially a Nazi sympathizer and later a critic of Hitler, Martin Niemöller is best known for his statement. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me.
Yeah, that is a powerful quote. Yeah. When we start refusing basic human rights and dignity to fellow mankind, who's to say that you won't be next? Like, where will it end?
Exactly. And I think that's been a theme throughout the entirety of human history with power dynamics. We follow, but we tend to avoid speaking out. There's so many examples of this, even in fictional literature, like The Hunger Games.
Oh, that's a great example. Yeah, like survival of the fittest, or really a cruel and twisted take on eugenics.
Mm-hmm. So how does a country rise from the ashes?
Time. Lots of it. So Vaknin says the process of reconstruction, of rising from the ashes, of overcoming the trauma of having been deceived, exploited, and manipulated is drawn out. It's difficult to trust again, to have faith, to love, to be led, to collaborate. Feelings of shame and guilt engulf the erstwhile followers of the narcissist. This is his sole legacy, a massive post-traumatic stress disorder.
Oh, wow. Okay, a collective trauma. This feels like it sets up a nation to be vulnerable and need rescuing again.
Tragically, you are so right. Yeah. But if we can face our own narcissism and recognize that we've been bamboozled, there is hope. Like with insight healing and leaning on one another, there is hope.
Agreed.
And I'll end with this last quote from Vaknin in the 90s. Hitler forced us all through a time warp, and no one emerged unscathed. He was not the devil. He was one of us. The banality of evil, just an ordinary loser, a consummate failure, a mentally disturbed figure, a member of a mentally disturbed nation who lived through disturbed and failing times. He was the perfect mirror, a channeling, a voice, and the very depth of our souls.
Oh, wow.
And on that note, that's a wrap. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of The Personality Couch. Make sure to check out our blogs that coincide with these episodes at www.personalitycouch.com. And as always, don't forget to give us a thumbs up or rate and review us on your favorite podcast app. And on YouTube, hit that bell so you don't miss a single episode in our Narcissism series. Be well, be kind, and we'll see you next time on The Personality Couch. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute a professional relationship. If you're in need of professional help, please seek out appropriate resources in your area. Information about clinical trends or diagnoses are discussed in broad and universal terms and do not refer to any specific person or case.